Okay, what's going on, everybody? We're here, we're live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. If you can see and hear me clearly, please drop a one in the live chat and then we can get today's stream started. And as I'm waiting for the ones to come in, please, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button. That is one of the most important things you can do for this channel. That helps so that this video permeates throughout the YouTube algorithm. Therefore, this video will go out to those that are interested in this type of content. And it also ensures that those who are subscribed to the channel will get the notifications to their phone. Also, share this video out on your social media platforms as well, because it has the same effect on YouTube algorithm, but also lets everyone know that I'm currently live. And if you haven't already and you've been cloud watching my channel for quite some time now, but you haven't subscribed, please make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And also follow me on Telegram. The link to my Telegram group is pinned in the live chat above. Make sure you do that. I currently have 300 some odd followers on Telegram. The goal is to get 1,000 by the end of the stream, not by the end of the stream, but by the end of this year. And also make sure you stick around until the very end of this video, where you'll be redirected to my second channel, Just Talking with TD and Rob, where I will be going live on that channel today at 12:35 Pacific Standard Time. And we'll be talking about a host of nonsense. And you'll get to see a different side of me where I'm a little bit more jokey and a little bit more fun and not so serious, right? So I haven't seen, where are the ones at? Drop a one if you can see and hear me clearly. I see comments coming in, but I haven't seen a one yet. If you can hear me clearly, please drop a one in the live chat and we can get things moving. Also, there is a pinned poll that's where I'm asking the question. Let me know if you've been getting the text notifications. Those of you who have texted TD Hip Hop to number 33222 to get the text notifications, please hit that poll and answer that question for me so I can see that you've been getting your text notification. I see the ones are starting to come in. So now we can get today's show started. Thank you very much. Let's get going. All right. So as you can see, today's show is titled Brandon Johnson, Chicago Alderman Battles to End Sanctuary Status. Now, this isn't Brandon Johnson who's battling to end the sanctuary status, but there are two aldermen that are going up against Brandon Johnson and essentially city council as a whole in Chicago to put an end to the sanctuary city status in Chicago. So that's what I want to dive into today. But before we get too deep into that, what I want to do is get into some other news just concerning what's happening with the Biden crisis in Chicago overall, right? So give me a second while I pull up this article that I want to go through very quickly. And then we can dive a little bit deeper into what's happening in the actual city of Chicago, because a lot of people are fed up, just like in New York. But the population in the city of Chicago, they're pretty upset. They're pretty mad, and they're pretty salty over what's going on with all the migrants pouring into their city, draining the city of its financial resources. Now, for those of you who don't know, a record number of buses have come into Chicago over the past weekend, right? 12 buses in total in between Saturday and Sunday. But on Sunday, they had 7 buses come in one day, which is the current record for the number of buses that came into Chicago with migrants in them in a one-day period, right? So here's that article here. Now, I'm not going to read through it, but I just wanted to have that here so that you all can see it and you can read through it for yourself. But also, it didn't stop there, right? It didn't stop there as it pertains to the buses coming into the city, dropping off migrants at record numbers. It didn't stop there because the following day, 7 more buses came into the city. Now, this news is via Ben Bradley, who was a reporter for WGN News. WGN is the local news station in Chicago. And Ben Bradley wrote this: 8 more buses of migrants expected to arrive in Chicago today, largest number in a single day. Latest stats, 15,000 plus arrivals, 8,996 in city shelters. and 1,656 at police stations. And then he went on to correct that tweet that he put up. And in the correction, he put update. City now says 7 buses today. The 8th won't arrive until tomorrow. But you get the point. Now, what I find interesting is that there are so many buses arriving into the city of Chicago, filled with migrants, that at this point, they can't even keep track anymore. I should say with so-called migrants, that they can't even keep track anymore with what's going on, right? And what I want to show you next is this tweet right here. Now, this woman isn't a reporter, but she was also stating that, and this was the next day, mind you. This tweet right here was an update from Ben Bradley on September 26th, right? So in a matter of 48 to 72 hours, there were, 20 buses that came in. In a matter of 78 or 70, in a matter of 48 to 72 hours, 20 buses of migrants came into the city of Chicago. And in the very next day, according to this woman here, that I'll pull up on the screen right now, another, I believe it is 7 buses the next day came into the city. So we're talking about, what's that, 27 buses in a matter of 3 to now 4 days? That's crazy. The city of Chicago is getting hammered with the so-called migrant crisis that I coined the Biden crisis. They're getting hammered right now. She writes, sources tell me 7 new buses of migrants will be arriving in Chicago this afternoon. This follows the arrival of 10 bus loads of asylum seekers last night. Okay. So they can't even keep track with all the bus load of so-called migrants coming through. And like I said, people are very upset. This is a tweet here that should be coming up on the screen from, of course, it didn't pop up. Give me just a second. Maybe if I go back one more, here we go. This was a tweet here from Jamal Green. Some of you may know who Jamal Green is. Some of you may not. From my understanding, because I've been following him for quite some time now, he's a pretty prominent organizer in Chicago concerning the Black community. And he wrote this responding to the tweet that I just read. It should be illegal to keep doing this. We need to pass an ordinance to make it a crime to transport migrants across state lines into Chicago. Charge the bus driver and seize the bus, period. Stop the flow. Now, I don't know if I'd charge the bus driver. I mean, the bus driver is just doing his job. You know what I mean? The bus driver is most definitely just doing his job. But I understand the sentiment, right? I understand the sentiment. But the thing is that that's not going to be made illegal for Governor Abbott to ship migrants over to the city of Chicago. That's not going to happen. But what could assist in that is ending the sanctuary city status in Chicago, which is what aldermen are trying to do, right? But before we get into that, let's get into the specifics of what's happening now in the city of Chicago as it pertains to the Biden crisis and its effect on businesses in the city, because now you have businesses that are starting to lose business because the shelters around it are making the people feel unsafe. So the bars and the nightclubs and the restaurants that people used to go to, they're not going to them anymore because the surrounding areas are no longer safe due to the shelters that are being placed there. So let's get into that right now. There are currently 234 of you in the live stream right now. Please hit that like button if you have not already. Please do that. That is one of the most important things that you can do for this channel. Now, let's get into that article here. And I want to do some reading, and we're going to deep dive into this to find out what's really happening in the city of Chicago and its effect on businesses in the city, right? So this here comes from the Chicago Tribune, and the article is titled, "As Migrants Clash Near High Volume Shelters, Neighborhoods and Businesses Grow Alarmed. We don't feel safe." We don't feel safe. Now let's get into it, right? Over the weekend, a fight broke out near the 1,163 resident migrant shelter at the former Standard Club 320 South Plymouth Court. Just the latest brawl to be caught on camera outside of one of the high population shelters downtown. So once again, fights are breaking out at these shelters, with the city buckling under the growing number of migrants. 12 buses carrying 560 more asylum hopefuls arrived this weekend, and no sign of the influx slowing down. Tensions among migrants, residents, and business owners are reaching a boiling point. The neighborhoods say they've witnessed frequent fights. I'm going to repeat that again. The neighbors say they've witnessed frequent fights, loitering, and other misconduct. While most told the Tribune they fully support efforts to aid the migrants, they have grown weary of the city's solution to cram thousands of people into highly trafficked shelters, and they're concerned about safety, not only for themselves, but of migrants too. I don't think any of us care that there are shelters there, but here's the important part. But it is the fact that there are zero attempts to control the situation, and we don't feel safe, said Brandon Valpita, the owner of Brando's Speakeasy, a popular karaoke bar near the shelter on Plymouth Court. Our clients don't feel safe anymore. So the owner of that bar said, we don't feel safe, and our clients don't feel safe anymore because of the fact that there are zero attempts to control the situation. Now, this is something that I've covered on numerous occasions here, because oftentimes in the city of Chicago, and I'm assuming as well in New York as well, but we hear of this disorganization of the shelters happening more in Chicago, where what the people of Chicago were sold on was the fact that we're going to put these shelters up here, right? But don't worry, everything's going to be safe. They're going to be curfews. There's going to be round-the-clock policing. Don't worry, everything will be all right. We're on top of it. And the reality is that once those shelters pop up at moment's notice, at days' notice to the community that resides there, there is no oversight. It's a free-for-all. The shelters pop up, and basically the city tells the residents, hey, good luck with all that. That's what's going on, right? Now let's dive into this article some more and find out some more information as to what's going on with the Biden crisis in Chicago. Though crime stats don't show a marked difference in and around the areas of high volume shelters from prior years, the violent altercation and migrants engaging in lewd activity at Pritzker Park, Kitty Corner, from the shelter on Jackson and Plymouth are ever present, said George Likopoulos. That's just what his name's going to be. Likopoulos, whatever. Owner of several restaurants in the city, including the Plymouth Restaurant and Rooftop Bar, which sits right in the front of the shelter. So once again, just because crime statistics aren't reflecting what's really going on doesn't mean that what's really going on isn't actually happening. And that's one of the games that a lot of these people that are in support of sanctuary cities and migrant shelters and overall vote blue no matter who will play on you. They're going to say, hey, well, where's the data that supports this? Currently, the crime statistics doesn't reflect that yet. And that's if these are even actually being reported, right? It doesn't reflect that yet. But when you talk to the residents who actually reside there and the businesses that are actually there, they can tell you from firsthand knowledge, because they're witnessing it with their own eyes, that there's all type of debauchery and degenerate behavior going on where these shelters are being placed. And it's affecting businesses in the city of Chicago as well. So now let's get back into this article and get some more details as to what's going on, right? So now, most nights, large groups of migrants sit and stand while drinking at the park and harassing female passerbyers, a scene that he says discourages his patrons from visiting the restaurant. which is known for its location and its unique view of the city. The number of visitors at the restaurant, which is open from 4 p.m. to midnight daily, has drastically decreased, going from 400 to 500 on Thursdays and Fridays in the summer of 2022 to roughly 150. That is a huge decrease and a huge drop. His business went from 4 to 500 customers coming in on the weekend, on Friday and Saturday, from 4 to 500 customers to 150, because that's how unsafe people feel around these shelters. They don't feel safe because there's too much debauchery and degenerate behavior going on. Let's get back into it, right? So the article continues to read, we want to help and understand the humanitarian crisis, but this behavior makes it extremely difficult. I'm going to read his quote again. We want to help and understand the humanitarian crisis, but this behavior makes it extremely difficult. Lickapulse said, right? It's a big hit, not just to me, but our employees, who include a lot of mothers who depend on this job to feed their families. So once again, a lot of times we don't consider this when we're thinking about these businesses. Our focus kind of just goes on the business owner, but it's not just the business owner that's being affected. It's all of those families as well, right? It's all of the families as well that rely on those jobs, right? The mothers that rely on those jobs to take care of their children, and the brothers and sisters and the men as well that rely on these jobs as well. Everybody's being affected by this. Businesses are taking a huge hit, right? Alderman Brendan Riley, 42nd, outlined his concerns of alleged drug exchange and prostitution at the family shelter being operated at the Inn of Chicago, 162nd East Ohio Street, in a letter he wrote to Mayor Brandon Johnson in late June. Hundreds of his constituents and local business owners contacted his office to express their worries, including dirty sidewalks and witnessing migrants engage in physical altercations outside of shelters. So we're seeing over and over again, there's a lot of fights going on outside of these shelters, a lot of fights. But once again, as I stated in the last live stream, when we were talking about what's going on in New York, what do you expect? What do you expect when these shelters are mainly filled with single adult males? Stop letting the media fool you on the narrative of families, mothers, and children. Obviously, families, mothers, and children are in these shelters, but these shelters primarily consist of single adult males. And when you have a gang, hundreds, I mean, honestly, thousands of single adult males with nowhere to go, nowhere to live, no job, no money, no nothing, and they're just out here, just in the streets with nothing to do, you can expect crime. You can expect degenerate behavior. You can expect a whole lot of fights breaking out. And that's what's going on. And it's impacting the communities in Chicago in a serious way. And it's killing a lot of businesses over there, right? So let's jump back into this article, because there's a really important part that I want to get to. Let me read a little bit of this. I am sympathetic to the new arrivals situation and support Chicago. I am sympathetic to the new arrival situation and support Chicago being a welcoming city. However, these are serious concerns that need to be addressed immediately, Riley wrote in the June letter. Now, mind you, that's the alderman, right? That's the alderman. His constituents are complaining, and they're telling him that our neighborhood, our residents, and these businesses are being destroyed because of this. Yet this alderman, Brendan Riley, is still caping to keep Chicago a welcoming city. So rest in peace to that area, because its constituents aren't going to get anything that they're looking for as it pertains to the support needed to get that situation under control, because it doesn't appear that their alderman is serious about taking care of that. Now, what I want to do here, because I want to get through this article rather quickly to get to the next one, I want to come to, I believe it's, where is it at? A very critical portion in this article where an eyewitness, a woman who actually lives there, discusses what's happening. And that woman, her name is Maria. Maria is one of the females who resides in one of these shelters. And this is what Maria has to say. But before I tell you what Maria has to say, there are 408 of you in the live stream right now. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Please hit the like button if you have not already. And yes, Journeys, I'm definitely, rocking that Dragon Ball shirt, Dragon Ball GT, to be exact. I think this is going to be my new work shirt. You know what I'm saying? Whenever I go live, I'm going to put to bed the gray one that I always wear and rock out with the Dragon Ball GT shirt. Okay. But there are 417 of you all in the live stream right now. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Please hit that like button. Now, let's get back into the eyewitness account from Maria, who actually resides in the shelters, who's going to explain to us that everything that I've been reading so far and everything that I've been covering throughout this time period about what's going on in Chicago with all the degenerate behavior happening is true. It's true. None of this stuff is made up, and it's definitely not coming from me, right? All of this stuff is accurate. So let's dive into that right now and hear what Maria has to say before we get into the next article. Maria has been staying at the Inn of Chicago, one of the largest migrant shelters in the city, for several months. Recently, she said, the shelter staff held a meeting to warn migrants that if the littering, fighting, and congregating did not stop, they could be forced out. Now, here's a quote from Maria. But some people don't care. I repeat, direct quote from Maria. But some people don't care. They leave their garbage everywhere. They fight inside and outside of the shelters. It's concerning to us because we don't want to get kicked out of the shelter while we find an apartment to rent, said Maria, a single mother from Venezuela. We don't want to give her last name because she feared repercussions, right? Okay, so they're just, making sure they keep her anonymous. We supposedly, mind you, this is Maria again, and she's speaking about all the degenerate behavior from all the fighting that's going on in and outside of the shelter. So they're not just scrapping outside, they're scrapping inside and acting the fool inside also. Maria goes on to say, we supposedly came here to become better, to progress, she said. But allegations of drug use and violent altercations inside and outside of the shelters are unfortunately are true. I'm going to read that again because I botched that one. We supposedly came here to become better, to progress, she said. But allegations of drug use and violent altercations inside and outside shelters are unfortunately true, she said. We see it. They are unfortunately true, she said. We see it. Repeat that one more time, 3 times like Umar. All the situations that we have spoken on, that I've spoken on this channel concerning what's happening in Chicago are true, she said. We see it. Maria is a woman who resides within the shelters. So she's confirming that. And thank you very much, RCL, for being the first person to contribute to the. I know who RCL is. Stop ducking the smoke. I think I know exactly who RCL is. That's funny. No, RCL, I'm gonna keep ducking the smoke. I'm gonna keep ducking the smoke, and I appreciate your contribution to the channel, RCL. I think I know exactly who that is. And shout out to Cutthroat Nash, always contributing to the show. Cutthroat Nash said, what about Latin on Latin crime? You see, yeah, you don't hear about that. It hit you with the what about black on black crime? But they don't want to talk about that. You know, what about Latin on Latin crime that's going on inside of these shelters? And there's a lot of it that's going on in the city of Chicago, right? And we're getting eyewitness firsthand accounts of it as well, not just from the residents that are in the city, but also from those that are inside the shelters as well. And no one's speaking on this. Brandon Johnson, by and large, is keeping his mouth shut on all of this. You know, he doesn't want this to get out, I guess, especially with election season coming, or I should say it's here, right? And they're trying to get Biden reelected again, which I honestly don't see happening. That would be wild if he got reelected again. That would be crazy. But thank you both for contributing to today's stream. You are the first two to contribute to today's show. It is deeply appreciated, your contributions to the channel. Now, let's hop into the final article because I want to dive into what's actually going on concerning the two aldermen who are fighting to end the sanctuary city status in the city of Chicago. So I'm going to pull this article up here, and it comes from, it comes from Block Club Chicago. And let me get this up on the screen right now for you guys. And while I'm doing that, there are 423 of you in here right now. Please hit the like button if you haven't already, right? So once again, this is from Block Club Chicago. Two aldermen want voters to decide if Chicago should remain a sanctuary city amid migrant crisis. Yep, it's two of them. Hurricane IQ. Only two so far, at least so far. Now let's jump into this article before we head on out of here, right? As the city scrambles to house thousands of new arrivals, two aldermen want to scale back protections for migrants and refugees coming to the city. A resolution introduced by Alderman Anthony Beale, 9th, and co-sponsored by Anthony Napol. This is an Italian last name. Napolitano. That's what his last name is going to be today. Napolitano, by Anthony the Napolitano, 41st, would add a referendum to the March 2024 primary ballot, asking voters if they should keep its sanctuary city designation. So what they're trying to do is add a referendum to the 2024 primary ballot to see if people want to vote to get rid of Chicago being a sanctuary city. The local welcoming city ordinance means officials will not ask immigrants about their legal status or deny someone services based on it. It also means the city will not cooperate with federal U.S. immigration and custom enforcement authorities. Those protections were strengthened in 2021, closing loopholes that allow police to work with ICE in certain scenarios. Napolitano said the resolution, which has yet to be introduced to the city council, would give power to voters instead of politicians. He says residents will suffer if taxes increase to pay migrant-related resources, right? Government has the best intention of this being the right thing to do, but it has hurt our city and country financially, Napolitano said. You need to ask the tax-paying residents of your city, are we doing the right thing here? They need to be a part of the conversation because this is catastrophic. Referenda can be added, referenda can be added to election ballots via city council ordinance or resolution or a petition according to guidelines from Chicago Board election commissioners. Napolitano, who has long been against Chicago's designation as a sanctuary city, said he assumes there will be a faction of his colleagues who will try to bury the resolution, not to deal with it or to negate fault, he said. I guarantee if this thing is held or hidden, it's because they know that if you give the city residents the ability to vote on this, the numbers will be widely in favor of not being a sanctuary city, he said. We are not built for this. Now, this goes into why sanctuary, not sanctuary cities, but this goes into the importance of local politics, something that I've stressed numerous times over, really 100 times over at this point. Local politics is so extremely important. Who's in your city council is so extremely important because you have this gentleman right here, Mr. Napoleano, and that's not his actual last name, but I suck at pronouncing last names, right? But you have Mr. Napoleano here who's fighting against having Chicago be a sanctuary city. He's trying to have that done away with, but he's expecting, knowing that there's going to be an attempt by his colleagues, who are all Democrats, by the way, to bury that resolution. And also, just for kind of clarity's sake, the Napoleano character, whose name I'm butchering, he's a former Republican turned independent, right? So he's more or less kind of a lone wolf in this fight. It's really just kind of him and the individual's name who I read off earlier. I believe his name was Anthony Beale. Yeah, Anthony Beale. And Anthony Beale, the black man right here, he's a Democrat. He's a Democrat. So you have the Republican turned independent and the Democrat, and they're pretty much lone wolves in this battle. But once again, that just goes back into why local politics is so important, right? Because these things in the city of Chicago, as well as New York, it doesn't have to exist. The Biden crisis does not have to exist to the magnitude that it is happening there. Your local politicians do control that, and they could do something about that if they wanted to. They're just choosing not to, right? They're just choosing not to. Now, let's get into what those have to say who oppose getting rid of Chicago being a sanctuary city. Because obviously you have those that are trying to bury it. Let's get the names of those who are trying to bury that, right? Now, who we have here is Alderman Andre Vasquez. Vasquez says, and who is the chair of City Council Committee on Immigration and Refugee Rights, said the resolution could create a slippery slope around conversations regarding the government and handling the migrant challenges. I think it's beneath the values of the city, Vasquez says. I don't understand that because we're facing these challenges. A lot of folks can be reactionary, and this is what it looks like to me. The concern people have is less about being a sanctuary city and more of how we address the situation and the job any administration would do, right? There's nothing confusing here. And there's nothing reactionary that's going on here. The people of Chicago and these two aldermen are clearly seeing a pattern of an overflow of so-called migrants being bussed into the city that's resulting in numerous fights, altercation, drug dealing, prostitution, and the likes that are upticking around these shelters that are bringing down the neighborhood that people reside in, and it is also destroying the businesses in the city because now people are not showing up to the bars and to the restaurants because they don't feel safe. As we discussed earlier, you had a bar that went from having 400 to 500 customers a weekend to only 150. So the reaction to that, which isn't a reaction, is actually a solution, is to end Chicago's sanctuary city status. So it's not the people being reactionary, it's them being actually solutionary. That's what's going on. Now, I want to skip all this part here because it's not really important. We're beating a dead horse at this point, but I want to get to this specific portion. I believe it's here concerning Anthony Beale, the one who is standing alone with Mr. Napoleano to end the sanctuary city status in Chicago. Because what Anthony Beale is proposing, the Black Democrat, is this: a second ordinance from Beale, which Napoleano also co-sponsored, would require that aldermen receive 30 days notice of the city's plans to establish a shelter in their ward and give written approval for any such plans. The administrations of mayors Lori Lightfoot and Brandon Johnson have garnered criticism for short notice arrangements and lack of transparency around when and where and for how long the city will set up temporary shelters, giving local older people and neighborhoods little opportunity to weigh in. And that's the whole point when you saw this happening with Lori Lightfoot, as well as when now that we're seeing this happening under Brandon Johnson. That's the whole point. It's to just spring it upon you last minute. We're not going to give you an opportunity to block what we're trying to do. We're going to tell you last minute, like they did to people in Woodlawn and like they did to people in Hyde Park, with 3 days notice, hey, we're putting a shelter here at this hotel and good luck with all that. And as we see things play out, how the good luck works out is that it turns into debauchery, degenerate behavior, and all type of foolishness that's killing the businesses and driving down the neighborhoods. The same thing that the things that everyone was scared of, what everyone was protesting at Woodlawn way back when people were saying you're being xenophobic and all this other foolishness. They were not being xenophobic. They were not being anti-immigrant. They had legitimate claims of concern when you're bringing in all these so-called migrants with no background check. You don't know who they are, where they're coming from, what their situation is. You're just placing them in these communities, telling the communities good luck. And now everything that they thought would happen is now coming to fruition. So much so that we even had an eyewitness by the name of Maria, who resides in the shelter, who confirmed everything that we've learned so far to be true. And with all of that happening, there are only 2 aldermen, only 2, who are actively fighting to end Chicago's sanctuary city status. Only 2, a former Republican turned independent and a Democrat. And they have a huge uphill battle to go if they want to get that referendum on the ballot. Because for sure, as the sky is blue and the sun is hot, the vote blue no matter who gang that run the city of Chicago, right? And when I say that, I don't mean the population. I'm talking about the actual aldermen, because Chicago has a supermajority as it pertains to Democrats. And as far as the state is concerned, the state of Chicago has a supermajority of Democrats as well. As it pertains to those who are abiding and following under the leadership of the DNC, they are going to fight those 2 aldermen tooth and nail. Once again, this is why local politics is so important, critical, and dire, where you have on the national stage someone like Biden, who, for lack of better words, is BSing around. On the local level, you can handle things by making sure that you end sanctuary city status and put other provisions in place that block and prevent such an influx coming into the city that then is now destroying the city and driving down businesses and driving down neighborhoods, as we all have seen by way of the information that I presented to you. So with all that being said, I want to thank you all for joining me today. There are 513 of you all in here right now. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Thank you very much, AB Promotions, always showing love. He said hit the like button. Thank you very much, Bounce Prosperity, always showing love. Bounce Prosperity said thanks for covering this. The mayor said he don't want it to change, but we're not having it. We pay him, not the other way around. Vote no to stay sanctuary. Yeah, you got to vote no. You got to fight to make sure that that gets on the ballot. What has to happen in Chicago, that people have to get a consensus. I think the word I'm looking for is of which one of your aldermen actually support the referendum to get the who support to get the referendum on the ballot to be able to vote away sanctuary city status. Which one of your aldermen actually support it? Because as of right now, it's just Anthony Beal and Anthony Napolitano, those 2 aldermen. You only have 2. So if your alderman isn't Anthony Beal or Anthony Napolitano, whose last name I'm butchering, then that means your alderman does not care about you. They don't care about their constituents. They don't care about the actual citizens of Chicago who they're supposed to be representing. They don't care. They don't care because they don't even want to give you an opportunity to vote. They don't want to give you an opportunity to voice your concerns and for you to make the ultimate decision. As much as Democrats talk about voter suppression, voter suppression, voter suppression, funny enough, they don't want you to have a vote in the city of Chicago. They don't want you to have your say, because if you have your say, you might actually vote against the DNC's wishes and what they'd want to do and the direction that they want things to go into. So put that pressure on your aldermen in Chicago to find out who's really with it and who's not. Thank you very much, Balance Prosperity. Thank you very much, Keith Cunningham. And thank you very much, the King's Daughter, who says, reinforce the belief that by the people, for the people is and always will be a lie. And thank you very much, lastly, to Greg W. for showing love on Cash App. Now, as the stream ends, hit the like button on your way out, and you will be redirected to Just Talking with TD and Rob, where I will be going live over there with Rob in about, I want to say about 15, 20 minutes. 15, 20 minutes, we'll be going live over there. So stick around. Stick around, and you'll be redirected to Just Talking with TD and Rob. And, you know, we have fun on that channel, because on that channel, I'm a little bit more laid back, relaxed. There's a lot of joking going on, and not so serious and not so professional over there. Not so professional over there. So I'll catch you guys on Just Talking with TD and Rob in about, 15, 20 minutes. Have a great day. Peace.